Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm a teacher and author, and this is English Nerd. Today, in honor of Shakespeare's birthday, which is on April 23rd, I'm going to talk about Sonnet 18, Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day? It is Shakespeare's most famous poem. He has plays that are arguably more famous, but in terms of just individual poetic lines, that one stands the test of time. So I'm going to break down what I know and observe about Sonnet 18. Hopefully you learn something. If you are writing a paper or something like that, as always, make sure that you do your own investigation on top of listening to or watching this video, just because taking only my ideas and not adding your own would be plagiarizing, and we always want to avoid that. So anyway, without further ado, here is Shakespeare's Sonnet 18. So here is sonnet number 18. At the beginning of the sequence of Shakespearean sonnets, at least the way that they have been compiled since his death, the first several sonnets are all about a young man and how his beauty should continue on through a variety of means. So procreation and poetry and things like that. So sonnet number 18 falls squarely in the middle of that sequence. So often this sonnet is considered a very romantic sonnet, and it still certainly can be read that way. It was not written for Anne Hathaway, Shakespeare's wife. It was written for, like I said, a young man that many people assume is the Earl of Southampton, who was one of Shakespeare's patrons. There was a patronage system in Shakespeare's day that is, to one degree or another, coming back, at least in small form these days, where people would pay artists in order to commission works of art or allow them to continue their artistic endeavors. So, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? We start off with this kind of playful, rhetorical question. We know what the central metaphor is going to be because of that first line, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So we know Shakespeare is going to compare the subject of this poem to a summer's day. Is it going to be favorable or not? Let's see. Thou art more lovely and more temperate. So the sentence definitely continues. As you can see, it's essentially one question and then a big long answer, but let's take it bit by bit. So, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? We get the answer right in the second line, which is a little unusual for Shakespearean sonnets. Typically, if you've watched my video about analyzing Shakespearean sonnets, we usually get a problem at the beginning and then a conclusion at the end. We get an echo of that here, but not to the same degree that we get with some of the other sonnets. So this is a very favorable comparison. Thou art more lovely and more temperate even than a summer's day. And he's going to start listing the things that are wrong with the summertime. I know we're as I record this, I'm getting ready for the summertime to begin. This is the middle of April. It's only a couple months away. But he says, rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. So he starts summertime in May. And summer's lease hath all too short a date. So it just doesn't last all that long. Summertime is here and then gone. This is one of the problems with the summertime, in addition to the weather that kind of goes back and forth. In terms of the meter, Shakespeare does something interesting here. It's a very strong, typical iambic pentameter meter. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. But when we get to rough winds, there's not that clear da-da-da-da. We start off with a pretty strong word, and that's echoing and enhancing that idea of the rough winds kind of messing up not only the darling buds of May, but also the line itself. And summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines. If it wasn't clear, the eye of heaven is the sun, so sometimes it just gets really hot and uncomfortable, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. So either the sun can be too hot, or it can be dim and not really shine through either. The language in this second line, really these two lines, is interesting because we are comparing this young man to a summer's day, right? And then the language here, as he's talking about the sun, echoes the language that you would use to describe a young man. So we have not the sun, but the eye of heaven. We have his gold complexion. Typically, you don't describe the sun having a complexion, but this it almost personifies the sun. In fact, it does personify the sun when we have a pronoun and the word complexion both attributed to that. So even the sun personified is not as great as you, because it can go too far in one direction or the other. And every fair from fair sometime declines. This line can be a little bit tricky for people, but basically it's every fair from fair sometime declines. Even fair, beautiful things lose their beauty is the meaning here. So even beauty from beautiful things sometimes declines. It sometimes goes away. We see that with the summertime not lasting very long, for example. By chance or nature's changing course, untrimmed. So this one, by chance or nature's changing course, untrimmed, this to me is the toughest line for sure. Nature's changing course and chance both decline that beauty, that fairness, both kind of don't make that beauty last. But thy eternal summer. So here's where we get the volta, the turn. Again, if you've watched that video where I talk about how to analyze Shakespearean sonnets in general, what you typically get are two quatrains. So day, May, temperate, date, shines, declines, dimmed, untrimmed. So we have those first 8 lines, and then there is a turn for the final quatrain and the couplet at the end. But thy eternal summer shall not fade. So it's your summertime, your beauty, your temperateness, your loveliness, and all of those things shall not fade. So the focus shifts from being all about the actual season to being once more about this individual. Nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Owest, from what I understand, is not that you owe beauty to anyone, but rather it's owning, and it's an old way of saying that. So you will not fade or lose possession of that beauty that you own. This is a strong statement. A lot of Shakespearean poems are focused on the loss, the inevitable loss of beauty, the inevitable coming of death, or at least age or something. But that is not what Shakespeare is claiming here. He's saying that you will remain eternal summer, and you will not lose that beauty. Nor shall death, capitalized and therefore personified, capitalized death, brag, so personified, of course, thou wanderest in his shade. We have the contrast of shade and sun here. Basically, Shakespeare is making the comparison that this person has eternal summer. They will not walk in the shade of death, which is a contrast to that sunshine. When in eternal lines to time thou growest. So you are growing in eternal lines. So what lines is Shakespeare talking about? He's talking about the lines of poetry that Shakespeare himself is writing in this sonnet. I mean, here we are in 2024, at least at the time of filming this. Obviously, that is a far cry from around 1600, which is when Shakespeare wrote this poem. So it's true, we have these lines that are, in a way, or at least nearly eternal, which causes the subject to have this eternal beauty kind of recorded in these lines. And then we get the final couplet, which is just absolutely wonderful. So a couplet is just 2 rhyming lines as opposed to 4 lines that have a rhyming pattern. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this poem, and this gives life to thee. So in the mix of Shakespeare's procreation poems, I guess, the solution here is not have children like it is in, say, Sonnet 12, which I talked about in a different video. This one is the poetry itself will give you immortality. It will keep your beauty forever undimmed through the everlasting language of this poem, which is just a lovely way to conclude this wonderful sonnet. I hope you enjoyed that. Happy birthday, Shakespeare. Make sure that you do something Shakespearean for the 23rd. Maybe you watch a Shakespeare movie, or you listen to that one Mumford & Sons album, or whatever it is. It's going to get you in that Shakespearean mood. You could also get Laertes, the Hamlet retelling, which is available everywhere and in every format that books are sold. All right, until next time.